welcome to the Serpent Temple podcast. Here we are back again with another deep dive with an album that...
The fucking GOAT. The fucking OG.
Oh, shit, boy. Oh, Lord, he coming.
The best
The best album?
the best album.
It's the best album of all
the
time?
best album.
Okay, you could honestly make a claim that this is one of the best albums of all time. Right, so enough hyperbole. Today we're covering Lykathea Aflame, Elvenefris. Now, this is a band from Prague, Czechia, the formerly known Czech Republic. And this album was released, I've got listed October the 31st, 2000. So at the turn of the millennium, and I think I first heard it maybe about 2002 or 3.
Really?
Yeah, so I
You've
jumped
known
onto
about this piece of art for that long.
Almost 20 years, man. I jumped onto this quick just because there was a lot of people just like, this was around about the inception of places like Metal Archives and blog spots and stuff. So it was great because it was kind of like tape trading magnified and opened up to the wide world. So I was like a kid in a candy store on like the internet back in the days because I'd be looking like new releases and like just like those murmurings about this album. It's like, like Lykathea Aflame, like the best thing from, Czech Republic, now known as Czechia. And I will say for the record, man, if you have never properly explored the Czechia death metal scene, there are so many hidden gems in that scene. It's fucking unreal.
So great music.
How good that scene is. But this album in particular, so that was just like, like ridiculous statements, like, the greatest metal album of all time. Like, not even just the greatest death metal album of all time, the greatest metal album of all time, the greatest album of all time. And I was thinking, I need to fucking listen to
I gotta
this.
hear this shit.
I was like, all right, let's hear this shit. So I'm going to give a bit of a history on the band first before we delve into it. So, an interesting fact, which some more casual fans of this band may not know, is that they were formerly known and had a previous incarnation called Appalling Spawn, where they released a demo and an album. Now, I've not listened to the demo, which is Bestyle, Mystical, and Spiritual, then parenthesis, First Spawn, but I did have a downloaded copy of Freedom, Hope, and Fury, which was their first legitimate album, their only album release before they decided to morph into a new project, which became Lykathea Aflame.
I read quickly, I read that Appalling Spawn didn't have Thomas Korn on drums. Is that true?
That is correct. So the previous drummer didn't get the name. Apologies if they're watching.
Sorry, buddy. You weren't on Elvenefris. Good luck.
Yeah. So basically what happened was when that drummer left and Thomas Korn came in, that was the catalyst to morph in Lykathea Aflame. But I will say, like, that first album, Freedom, Hope, and Fury, the second Spawn, is a great fucking album. Like, if it's probably the closest thing out there that sounds like Lykathea Aflame. And it's definitely, like, well worth listening to if you're a fan of Elvenefris. Like, it's a good album. Not as good as Elvenefris, but, not many albums are. So, the lineup. So, we've got Peter Tomanek on guitars and vocals. I was panicking about how to pronounce that.
Potato.
Like PTOE. How the fuck do I pronounce that?
So,
Peter Toe. Andy Maresh on bass. Ondra Martinek on guitars. And then you also had Jiří Tomanek, which is Peter's brother, who provides a lot of the keys on this album, but wasn't an official member. And then lastly, but certainly not least, you've got Thomas Korn on drums. And Thomas Korn is actually involved in relatively renowned projects at the moment, such as Cult of Fire, who have made big waves on the Death Black scene, as well as Death Karma as well. And he also drummed on a pretty unknown legendary brutal death metal album from Czechia back in the days called Despise was the band. And the album was called Fragments of Reprisal.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Production's a bit iffy, as is a lot of, brutal death metal can be, but it's a solid fucking album. Nice. So if you want to hear Thomas Korn play some brutal death metal drums and blasts, like, that is the album to listen to.
Yeah, because Cult of Fire, he doesn't drum as unhinged as he does in Elvenefris. Like, it's not comparable, really.
Yeah, and I think it's fair to say, like, I realize I've been talking a lot about this already. I'm just going off on one. But, like, I think it'd be fair to say that the drums are probably the most divisible aspect of this album.
100%.
Particularly the drum production, right? Like, it's got that St. Angus snare.
It's a ping snare. It's a brutal death metal ping slam snare. And that is straight away, if you can't get past that, you're not going to like this album. And if that's the case, I feel very sorry for you because you are wrong.
But I feel like that's the thing, though, right? I feel like if you can't agree with the drums, that's where you get the contingents of people that don't like this album, because it's almost like that they can't get past that first initial barrier, which I actually do understand in a way. I do get it, because the drums are, especially in the original mix, because the remastered one, they've
helps.
they've altered the snare a bit and stuff, but it's so brutal, the drumming style, and there's so much going on in the music, which we'll get to eventually. But it's just, the only drummer I could kind of compare it to a little bit is Flo Mounier.
It sounds like Cryptopsy. It's like, but it's like, it's more precise than Cryptopsy. I don't know if you could say that. Like, it's
more precise, but with like a far harsher production. Right?
Yeah.
It's just like, but I like the fact that things are high in the mix. It adds an element of chaos to the music, and I think overall you can describe this album as quite a chaotic album, like chaotically beautiful.
The drums, it sounds like he's always rushing to get to the next bar. Like he never drops time. But the film Speed? The film Speed, where they're like, there's a bunch of people on a bus, and if the bus drops below a certain speed, there's a bomb on the bus and it's going to go off and everyone will die. This album feels a bit like there's a bomb underneath his drum throne, and if he plays below a certain BPM, everything's going to blow up.
That's a good analogy, yeah. But it's, oh God, where do you even start with this album? I think we'll do a track-by-track kind of review, if that's all right with you.
It's the best album.
Did I recommend this album to you?
This was the first album you ever recommended to me.
Damn, what a way to start.
It was a double whammy, because I actually discovered Phil Wadey's podcast, Phil's Breakfast Metal, through you recommending this album to me, because I looked it up on Spotify after you told me about it. And this album isn't on Spotify, but Phil Wadey did an episode where he was talking about this album. So I listened to the podcast just to hear there's the little sample of things, whatever, because where I was, like, I couldn't listen to YouTube because it was blocked on my work Wi-Fi at the time. And and I was just like, what the fuck?
So I would love to know, like, because the thing is, like, you'd be listening to this album for the first time in like quite an advanced, like, mature listener. And I couldn't imagine what that would be like for me personally.
There's very few albums that I've heard that have just completely. But yeah, when you hear this, there's nothing like it. It is it's hands down one of the most original albums I've ever heard. The fact that the composition style, the bare raw emotion that this band lays in front of you when you're listening to this album. This album makes me tear up regularly. While I'm listening to it, there are times this album has made me cry, and we'll get onto like the last track. But like, this album is so emotional, whilst also being so fucking relentlessly brutal and heavy.
So fucking heavy.
It doesn't make sense. It's just fucking
sense.
incredible. It shouldn't make sense, but it does, and it just hands down is just one of the best death metal albums ever.
Yeah, it's just so
one of the best metal albums ever.
Yeah,
it doesn't get the fucking respect it deserves.
In a league of its own. And I think even to this day, it's got like one of the highest, like in terms of like the sheer amount of people that reviewed it, it's got one of the highest aggregate scores on like Metal Archives and a lot of sites and stuff. Like, I think it's sitting at about
96,
maybe.
I think I was checking it this morning.
How much is it?
I think I want to say it was like 96% or something.
96, and that's high, because the problem with bands that gain critical acclaim, or just sort of like audience acclaim as well, is you then get people who
are going to knock them down.
Who go out their way to like not like an album, just to kind of like be that contrarian. Yeah. And that's totally what happened, because for the longest time, like only like a few years after the album was released, there was nothing but like 99%, 100%, 100%. Like at one point, the aggregate score was almost like 60-something reviews, 99%. And then like people said, oh, it's not that good. I was like, oh, the drum production shit.
Yeah.
So, will you record a better fucking album then?
Yeah, you record a better fucking album.
But anyway, should we dive headfirst into the music here? So, first track, Land Where Sympathy Is Air. So, the interesting thing is, I think when you listen to sound for the first time, you hear that first riff. I think it's safe to say it's an Eastern riff, right? Yeah. You think you're kind of getting Nile 2.0 here, right?
There's a lot of comparisons online with Nile and this band.
But it's totally unjust. I mean, not totally unjust.
No, I agree. Because like this band actually, so a lot of this band is inspired mainly by Egyptian stuff and references, but they also, which is obviously like North Africa, But the thing that's really interesting is they kind of do concentrate a lot on actual like North African scales and stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, as a white person who is like going out of their way to like learn Middle Eastern music, and I actually kind of have studied a lot of North African stuff as well, like solely. That might have just been that they've been like, I'm really interested in Egyptian shit and like looked up a bunch of Egyptian music. Maybe that's it. But like they do a very good job. Yeah. Incredible. And
Because it does sound authentic. And not to put you on the spot here, but I think one of the key, one of the things about the guitar playing and style, which I think differentiates this band from a lot of other bands in the death metal scene, is that they play in a major key, right?
They do a lot of major key stuff. Yeah.
Okay.
A lot. Yeah. Which you don't really get in. So like when Deaf Heaven came out, that was one of the things that people went crazy over Deaf Heaven with, because Deaf Heaven used a bunch of major key shit.
Yeah.
And people were like, no one's done this before. Like no one was fucking talking about Lykathea Aflame. But again, very different. Like Deaf Heaven doesn't sound anything like Lykathea Aflame.
Yeah.
But yeah, the thing is, the reason it still sounds so heavy is because they use a lot of, so like, the snare is part of it. If you had like a normal sounding snare and
it wouldn't have that hammering kind of like blasting.
Yeah. And it's kind of like with the pingy snare, part of the reason it kind of sounds better like that is that they're hitting the snare a lot. The snare is getting absolutely brutally abused throughout this album. It is getting hit frequently all the fucking time, which is why it doesn't occupy so much of a sonic space. And it's got this pingier, smaller, it takes up less space. It allows the other instruments to breathe. The guitars are very low. They're very kind of low, deep, like kind of low end, very dirty, grindy kind of guitars. The vocals are so fucking low and bestial. But they're writing all this stuff in like major key as well. But they're doing it all in these kind of weird time signatures. And there's a lot of stuff where they're just doing like a single bar of a riff into a single bar of another riff into a new section.
Yeah.
They switch frequently between clean and distorted guitars, which is quite unusual for like a grindy, death metal-y kind of brutal, slammy kind of band.
Yeah. Yeah. Once again, the only band I could think of that really kind of were doing something similar, even though albeit musically they sound quite different a lot of the time, is Cryptopsy. Like Cryptopsy would dip in and out, like especially Whisper Supremacy era Cryptopsy. There was a lot of moments there where they would dip into but more of like a flamenco style clean passage, and then back into like the chaotic kind of riffing. Whereas here, do you know what? It's on paper this shouldn't work because there's so much happening here. And they've managed to masterfully somehow cram so many different elements from so many different styles. There is not an album out there that exists that is equal parts achingly beautiful and brutally heavy.
No, there isn't. There just isn't.
No.
There's lots of like, this is somehow like heavier than, if this was like a Doom album with all the same concepts and stuff like that, it wouldn't be as heavy as it is, because there's something about the way it assaults your senses that makes it heavy. There's that thing, but there's enough breathing space and enough melody where it's pleasurable to listen to. It's not just atonal. It's not just, this is where Lykathea Aflame are, in my humble opinion, much better than Nile, because Nile have a lot of they're incredibly talented, incredibly, like, a lot of very good writing, and I do love Nile. I listen to Nile, and I like Nile a lot.
For the record, I love Nile.
But yeah, for the record, I love Nile. But the thing that really separates this band and that band in terms of their theme is that, like, a lot of Nile just comes across as like atonal. Like, it's just beating you around the head. Like, you listen to a couple of Nile songs, I'm like, I'm gonna listen to something else now because I want to hear some riffs.
Yeah.
But like, this has riffs as well.
Yeah.
And like beautiful, there's like clean vocal passages randomly that come in that are just gorgeous, just achingly gorgeous, where he's just kind of like almost like singing to a child, like to sing it to sleep or something. Because you're right. When you listen to Nile, you're never once really taken out of the mindset of, I'm listening to a death metal album here with some, like Eastern influences and themes. But there's so many moments on this album. Let's check the first track, for example, Land Where Sympathy Is Air. Like, the melody at 145 is like the first example of, like, this album, it feels spiritually cleansing. Yeah, it does.
You can listen to this album and feel like you're ascending on top of one of the fucking pyramids, and like you can picture like just these giant Egyptian, like, fucking Babylonian gods and shit. Like, it's totally takes you out of that feeling you get with a lot of death metal, where it is, because for the most part, there's a lot of death metal out there we listen to for the riffing primarily and the brutality of it, whereas this band manages to retain all those elements.
Yeah, but also giving you other shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and like like the major keys. It's just how they managed to blend like a lot of the major guitar work with the super like uber brutal like death metal parts. Like it's got some of the heaviest like segments in any album I've ever heard.
I'm as a musician, I'm constantly inspired by this album. Like every time I listen to it, I'm just, there's sometimes you listen to like Animals as Leaders, and you're like, wow, Tosin Abasi's fucking good at guitar.
Yeah.
This you listen to this album, you're like, wow, this band is fucking good. Everything.
And there's 20-minute footage. It's the only footage I could find of them playing live on YouTube.
It's like Commerce Fest.
Commerce Festival. It was 2001, wasn't it?
They bring it live as well.
Oh mate, his fingers are all over that fretboard. Like he is making love to that fretboard.
Sorry.
It's funny. Did you see their Encyclopedia Metallum image? Which like obviously them like 20 years later.
The repress of the album. Yeah. They're so old. I love it.
I love it. It's just like we made this one fucking sick. It's like Demolic in it. We've made this one fucking sick album.
I wish this band would come back and do a Demolic. They need to do their Victory Lap tour, man.
I know.
They need to be playing with like a big like Blood Incantation needs to kind of go on tour with fucking Lykathea Aflame.
Yeah, it's from what I gather because. Yuri, the brother who does the keys on this album, does do some work with Cult of Fire as well. Okay. So we know that at least Yuri and Tomas are still active musicians at this point. The other members of the band, I don't know what they're kind of up to. There's not much information about what they're up to these days. But
really comes back to Pateau, doesn't it? He's clearly the mover.
I think it's his vision.
Yeah, it's his vision. He's Peter Tomanek, whatever's going on with him, he's the person that people need to talk to. Like, I guess his life just doesn't move in those kind of.
Yeah, but it's
maybe he's ill. You never know. Like he might have developed some kind of health condition, so he can't play anymore. Like it's possible.
And that, or just like the harsh reality that there's no fucking money in the scene, and he's
true.
He might have written one of the best albums of all time, but it's not going to pay the fucking bills.
Yeah.
So you got a job as a fucking roofer or just something else. That I mean that's what a lot of these like these bands that came around at this time had to do. Like you didn't have the digital boosting that a lot of bands benefited from that that mid 2000s MySpace era, where a lot of bands got big really quickly because there was that exposure, and it was like fresh new exposure. It hadn't become as inundated and overcrowded, which it did become very, very quickly. You had bands like Waken the Cadaver who were like like the darlings of the MySpace scene, and then before you knew it, 2 weeks later there was 100,000 deathcore bands doing the same thing. And that's often the way in the scene. Like there's something that's discovered that's new and fresh, and everyone else just homogenizes it to the point where it becomes really hard to pick the diamonds from the rough.
It's interesting though. I think a lot of the fact this band is good is because they are, they are doing like Egyptian stuff, and like there is a certain amount of that. Like as far as I can tell, no one in the band themselves is Egyptian, so it is just a bunch of white people from, Czechia just being like, oh, let's do, and it works that Niall do it, but there's there's like Cult of Fire, for example. They're like a much more extreme version. There's a whole visual element that comes to Cult of Fire, and it's very pretty to look at, and there's lots of stuff that they're kind of like, on Cult of Fire, on their like Facebook and stuff, they talk about having like a spiritual advisor from India and stuff like that, and it's like you come back to it and it's like you are just a bunch of white guys just kind of wearing like Indian symbolism. It's like a bit weird, music's great, but like it's like you kind of feel like it should just be a bunch of Indian guys doing that because they kind of do a more real version,
I suppose
but that's kind of like a thing with like white people don't really have a lot of culture. You know what I mean? If you're talking like, or if they do, they like get problematic with it and take it in the wrong fucking place. But like I don't know, maybe that's part of it in some way. Like it's really interesting, but like I don't know. I guess there's only so much I can say about it as a white person, but there's a lot of like longing and a lot of love, and I really think you were saying about like Peter. Is it Peter?
Yeah.
Easy
to pronounce than the nickname.
Peter Pateau. Presumably he wrote the lyrics, but like from what I can see is like there's a lot of longing and a lot of love, and there's like this kind of romantic vision, a la like Disembowelment. Again, there's like a common theme of like there's a lot of romance. There's a lot of desire, a lot of love. And like the lyrics to that first song, where a land where sympathy is air, which I love also. Do you know that French band Birds in Row?
Oh yeah, I remember Birds in Row.
Birds in Row, like, because they were like saying when they made their name, they were like, if we just called ourselves Birds in a Row, it's kind of stupid. But like they were talking about like the name of the band is to do with like, you know, like kind of a vision, an idea of like birds being a school, like following each other, not knowing who's in charge or whatever, or just knowing where they go. Yeah. But like just changing the wording slightly gives it this whole thing like Birds in Row. I don't know, it just works and it's not stupid and it's not strange and it's kind of the same.
It rolls off the tongue a bit better.
Rolls off the tongue and it also is more kind of stands off, and it kind of feels like that for me here. It's not the land where sympathy is there. It's land where sympathy is there.
Yeah.
It's such a little thing, but for me it's really like powerful. But there's one stanza of the lyrics towards the end of the song where he says, I am searching for the land where I will fall on my knees and will be weeping for a long time, where my mind shall extend to the sky and my heart shall speak the language of the trees and open like a water lily touched by the morning sun. Like, how fucking beautiful is that?
And like, that's the bit where he's like, I think that is the line where he's like doing the chanting bit, I think. Because it's just like, that's one cool thing, and you touched upon it a bit as well. Like, the clean vocal passages are great because they're very ritualistic at times. Yeah. It's like when they're not sung, it's often done in a kind of like a very oratory sort of way where they're like, you know, it's still, you know, it reminds me of Enslaved.
Yes.
You know, the way they implement the clean vocals, and there's definite parallels between Lykathea Aflame and Enslaved, purely in the way they make me feel when I listen to the music more than anything. It's something that, you know, just pierces my husk. Yeah. And like attaches to my soul. Yeah. And that's something that they have, that both bands have, that are very akin to each other, which is why I hold both of them so dearly.
In such high regard, yeah. Don't you feel with the clean passages, like the ritualistic ones that you were talking about, when he sings them, whenever I hear them, I feel like I've got my eyes closed and my face is like I'm facing the sun. You do? It's so weird. Get what you're saying. Yeah, feel like you can almost fucking, it doesn't matter if it's a cold day, you can almost feel the warmth of the sun on your fucking face. Yeah. There's something that's so, and again, I say this word a lot with these kind of bands that I love, that we love, it's like, it's fucking joyous. Yeah. This album celebrates existence. Yeah. This album is not trying to fucking get you to work in an Amazon warehouse. This album is getting you to fucking celebrate being a human soul who is alive and dancing through the fucking stars and the cosmos and being a fucking brilliant individual made up of all your past experiences and everything you are. It's like, I fucking love that about this album so much.
It's fucking, they hit the nail on the head there, man. Yeah. Fuck, so second track to become Shelter and Salvation. One thing I do like about one thing I think is just so fucking understated about the band is how masterful they are at the instruments to begin with. Like, the guitar work on this album is relentless.
It's so fast as well.
Dizzying and like, you know, this is technical death metal, but not in the soulless way. And I love bands like Necrophagist, and I love some of the bands that spawned as a result of them getting the traction that they did. But this hits different.
Yeah, it does.
And this track in particular, I love it because they're great at building the atmosphere as well and leading to those heavy riffs. Yeah. It's always such a good payoff. Like, the track's off, you know, it's melodic, it gets progressively heavier and heavier. You get to about 3 minutes in, where there's like a really cool kind of like clean sung passage with like the semi-clean guitars. The way they seamlessly transition out the clean guitars and the fucking heavy guitars is just unreal. And it's got like a really cool, like, fucking discordant doomy passage in this track as well. Like, they fucking experiment a lot with, like I said, time signatures and just different paces. Like, you know, they've got a lot of slower, doomier riffs and some absolutely blistering fast work. So it's just every track on this album is amazing.
Most of it's fast.
Oh, fucking yeah. I mean, I would say a good 80% of it is blisteringly fucking. So
it's so much. I love how so much of it is just on the snare as well. But again, it's so precise. There's something so precise about the drums that really separates out. The drum performances really cannot be understated.
Yeah, because it's like, it's one of those things where it sounds like his drumming is, if he missed one beat or was slightly out of time by a fraction, it would fuck up the entire track, because there's so much shit he's doing. So to be that precise and to still keep it together shows how good of a drummer he is, because there's so much going on.
Yeah, because I feel like this was all recorded live. I feel like at the very least it was recorded between like a guitar track and the initial drums live track together. Like because it's really cool. There's a couple of bits where the guitars don't like quite make the riff or whatever in time. But I feel like the drums do. I mean, there must probably be a couple of drop notes on the album. Must be with the sheer number of hits. But like even when the guitars, the thing that's so cool is that the times where the guitars don't hit the notes, I feel like it might be a case of not that Peter made a mistake. I feel like the times that Peter drops notes is because it's not humanly possible to play them at the speed they're playing the song.
Yeah.
I feel like they wrote beyond human capability, which is why you just don't hear bands that sound like this.
No. It's like it's the upper echelon. It's the highest epoch of fucking musical genius, in my opinion, because it's just got that soul as well. The next track on the album is probably a contender for maybe one of my favorite tracks on the album. So Bringer of Elvenefris Flame. There's one riff in particular, which, firstly, I want to talk a little bit about 3 minutes in, we get a riff that definitely sounds like it'd be taken from like one of Enslaved's more proggier moments.
Oh yeah.
Like it's just so fucking cool. Like I just love the tone and the feel of it. And the major riff that comes in, which is like a variation of the main blasting riff, sounds so fucking joyous but chaotic at the same time. Yeah. It sounds like someone losing their mind.
Yeah.
Like it's just like the da-na-na-na-na-na-na. Like it's so happy, but it's like, what the fuck is going on? Because it's so heavy. But so good. But yeah, just that segment is one of my favorite segments in music. It's just because there's a bit where
I know the bit you're talking about now. Yeah, it's fantastic.
It's so good because it kicks. Because first time he hears it, takes you off guard, and then it transitions into like the almost like flamenco clean part.
Yeah, because he's like playing it on the ride on the drums as well. Like switches up the rhythm, and it's like
because it comes back in. It's so good, so fucking good.
Really,
like
really good.
I do not have anywhere close to the musical theory knowledge to even comprehend what has gone on in this album. It's just fucking absolutely bonkers. But absolutely fantastic track.
Yeah, I love the Phil Wadey review of this. He's saying like how there's so many like effects and stuff on the guitar. He kind of imagines the guitarist like running around like stamping on a pedal board, like trying to turn
it's
everything
like
off.
Blue Man Group or something. Just stomping about. But it's give a quick shout out to like the keys on this album as well, because there's something you were mentioning.
Fucking so good.
Oh, so tastefully done.
Really, really tastefully done.
Because if there's one album that you would think wouldn't need keys because there's so much going on already, yet they still have added them in and have totally not detracted from the atmosphere or the musicianship of the other members. They're so well done.
Really well
done. And they just really add to that kind of transcendental like atmosphere of the album. Just so fucking just...
Yes, I can't remember what song it's on, but you know that bit where it's like, and it's like the way the keys harmonize with the guitar, with the particular chords he's playing. Again, it's just like so beautifully, so well thought out. It's just like some of the melodies are incredible. Like, and you know, like we were saying with like the end of that Sadness album. Like you hear some of the chords played and you're like, I don't fucking hear people play these chords. And I don't know if it's because there's two different instruments playing like complementary notes or what, but like there's something about the chords that they're playing where it sounds like a half forgotten memory, you know? It's like you feel like it feels like a childhood memory or something.
Yeah, it's like you ever had those dreams, you know, where you wake up and you're kind of in that kind of like that half conscious state.
Yeah.
Where you're just transitioning out from the dream world.
Yeah.
And it's like a really peaceful dream.
Yeah.
And it's just slowly fading into like the annals of your brain and to be like forgotten forever.
Yeah, it's really like that, but like a between place.
But it's just, they've definitely tapped into something that fucking very few bands. And it's funny, because I remember when me and Nina were reviewing the Afterbirth album, and there is moments on Afterbirth that I do think that there is, I don't know if it's a direct influence, but something that definitely harkens back to some of the guitar work that the Lykathea Aflame are doing on this album.
Interesting. I'm pretty sure I've seen, because I know Cody controls the Afterbirth Twitter. I feel like, I know that the Big Will's mentioned them loads on the Heavy Hole podcast. I know he's definitely a huge fan of Lykathea Aflame, but I'm pretty sure I've heard Cody mention them.
Would make sense, right?
Yeah.
It's just, I feel like anybody like who's like super into the death metal scene who's come across this album, there's not many people.
Yeah.
Because the thing is about this album, which I think often doesn't get mentioned too much, is like there is a clear like element of like slam and traditional death metal on this album.
Very slam. That's kind of part of why it's so good. if you ask me. It's like, it's like brutal death metal. It's not just death metal. It's like, if it was just like a death style album, it would still be incredible. It would probably be more accessible and more successful if it was. To be honest with you, it probably would be if it was like that. But the fact that it's not, the fact that it's this more brutal, slammy thing is like kind of, again, it's like just doesn't make sense.
No.
Like you just don't hear bands that sound like this.
Because, you're right. They could have probably stripped back about 70% of what was going on here and created a super popular, accessible metal album. But they haven't. They've just said, fuck it.
Yeah.
we're creating like something for the diehards to be appreciated by people who love extreme music.
There is a band that sound like that, though. Have you heard of a band called Sutra?
No.
Oh, I've got to fuck it. You got to hear Sutra, man. It's
Oh,
fucking great.
heard
They're
them.
literally like, what I just described there. It's like they heard this and they were like,
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, they're really cool.
I need to check them out. How do you spell it?
It's like Kama Sutra. I'm pretty sure.
Kama
It's like
Sutra, okay, cool. I definitely need to.
Sutrah then.
Any band that can achieve a fraction of what this album has
Yeah,
achieved,
it's
I'm going
really
to give
cool.
the time of day.
Yeah, very like posy vibes, but it's like more like a death style album than a
Oh, okay.
slammy grindy kind of album.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's very good.
Yeah, it's so next track we've got Flower and Entities. Now, what's cool about this track is the first 30 seconds of this track is some of the most schizophrenic 30 seconds of music, because you get like this crushing doom like death rip, like proper blasting, an acoustic passage, and then something that sounds like something off of fucking Symbolic by Death.
Yeah.
Like it's just, and that's the first 30 seconds. You're just like, what the fuck is going on?
This is the one with the like the the beautiful fucking clean passage.
Oh,
This is so sick.
So fucking good. And it's just like, the interesting thing about this album is there is pretty much elements of every facet of what this album is bringing musically in every track.
Yeah.
There isn't a single track that is a bit more edging on that side or edging on another side. Every track pretty much features all the components meshed into one. But this is what's so masterful about the album. They've managed to retain all those components, but write compositions that are original, catchy, groovy, fucking super melodic, and they've done that fucking 10 times on the album. Well, 9 times, because the last track's more of an instrumental then, and which is beautiful in its own right.
Yeah.
But it's just crazy how well constructed this album is.
Yeah. No, yeah. I mean, the 11 tracks of this album could just be me and you going, yes, it's the best album ever. Like,
It's just so fucking good. I mean, I could just, and that's the problem when I think reviewing it. And often when I review something that I've got such a nostalgic and passionate and just deep love for, it's just like, it's just me fawning and saying the same shit over and over again.
Yeah,
but like
that's good, and like I think people need to hear that.
But people need to understand.
People need to understand that this piece of art has affected you that deeply. Like that's what people don't really share a lot in reviews, and that's why I don't really care for like fake fucking people, And that's why it's better to. I think I would much rather talk about an album like this and do a video that's not going to fucking get 1 million views necessarily because it's an album not everyone's heard of. But you know what? Like, we fucking care about what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Rather than be like, if we were both just Googling like, oh, what's the biggest album right now? Oh, maybe if we place this one, people will click on it because it's new. Like, we're not really, who gives a fuck?
No,
like,
fuck. What I give more fuck about is just like, like what happened with the Phlebotomized album. Like, I was over the moon that the guys in Phlebotomized saw it and were kind enough to share it and also say, hey guys, thanks for doing this.
Yeah, thank you so much for the fucking art. And you get to have that connection with like a person. Like, I don't know, it's just really important to like, let people know that like, fuck, I really appreciate what you've done.
Yeah, and it's like, and this is an album that, saying that, this isn't an album that I would say is maybe underappreciated in the grander scheme, but like in certain circles, this is a heavily lauded album.
Yeah.
Like this is, like I was saying at the beginning, like this is an album that people refer to as being like one of the best of all times. It's like the people involved in this album, I'm sure they fucking know how good it is.
Yeah, they know.
And two, how much it's changed certain people's lives.
Yeah, there's clearly just stuff behind the scenes that we'll just probably never know. The lyrics to Flowering Entities are really cool.
God,
there's one line where he's like, let's learn. As the sun for the earth, let's become salvation. Let creatures flower and shine under the touches of beautiful energy. Perhaps it can't be seen, but they are starving and thirsty. They are eager. As a mirror, light, let's reflect negativity and show pure reality. Let's become the islands of peace and harmony in that vast ocean of discomposure and disharmony, and let the tired ones rest. What a beautiful last line as well. Let the tired ones rest. It's so caring. It's
Do you know
so
what I love about
fucking
this?
nice.
You go to like a focus group, right?
Yeah.
You read out these lyrics to people, and you say to them, you go to say a focus group of like musicians,
Yeah.
and say, I want you to write the music you think this.
Yeah,
you
they
think
play
these
like
lyrics
free
came
chord
from.
fucking acoustic bullshit.
And then you play them this,
Yeah.
and then you hear like the fucking. I want to give a shout out, like Peter's vocals, like are some of the most brutal death metal vocals out
They
there.
are.
Uber
Paint
guttural.
stripping. They're guttural as fuck.
Like super, like it's like on what I was saying when we were reviewing the Sandus album about like like the whole thing about enunciation, like on the flip side to my appreciation for enunciation. Sounds like I'm spitting bars.
It's a bit above.
Appreciation for enunciation.
Appreciation.
There is a part of me that is still loves that super fucking subterranean, can't make shit out, just like just pummeling, because it's very percussive, and that adds to the brutal sections of the song as well, because it's like an additional element of the music that is just there to just viscerally, kind of beat you into submission and force you to, appreciate the music.
Yeah.
And I just love it, and I think that sort of vocal style fits so well with the style of music.
Yeah.
And I think, I was talking about the drums being quite divisive, but I remember reading a few reviews where people were not overly fond of the harsh vocals.
Wow, really?
Yeah, I think because they would have preferred, like, it's funny because I actually remember reading once, how much of this is true, I don't know, but the band apparently changed their name again to just Lykathea.
Lykathea, yeah.
And there was rumors at some point that they added a clean vocalist and keyboardist that was meant to be a full-time member of the band.
Have you not heard the...
I might have heard in the past, but I'm not
No,
familiar.
but in the remastered version of the album, there's like tracks at the end of it, and one of them is a re-recorded version of, I think it's To Give, but there's a re-recorded version of To Give after the original recordings, and it's got the female singer and the violin on it.
Fuck you,
Have
shit.
you not heard that?
No, because
It's wild, man.
I have this album on CD,
Yeah.
right? It's my most prized possession. That's a bit of an
I'd
exaggeration.
love a copy
but,
of this on vinyl, man. I have a fucking...
But so
Dude.
I nabbed this on CD. I've got a CD copy of this. So
Yeah,
I
I need to
listened
get
the
a CD
shit
copy.
out of that CD. And obviously I ripped it and then upgraded it to like 320 kilobytes per second.
Yeah.
Well, down from FLAC when I converted it. Or not FLAC, sorry,
This
WAV.
fucking band doesn't have a fucking Bandcamp.
I know.
Just make a fucking Bandcamp so I can give you money and get the files. Just
Yeah.
fucking do that.
I
for
do.
me.
I'd buy it. I don't
No,
collect
I'd buy
vinyls.
the
I'd buy this
physical,
vinyl.
But if I buy the physical, I'm paying some schmuck, some mook that bought it ages ago. No money's going to the band if I buy it on eBay.
Yeah.
But do a fucking Bandcamp so I can buy it second hand. Same thing with Sadness. Like I'm going to buy a CD copy of eBay because I really want a physical copy of it. But it's like, yeah, just let me give you like a fucking $5 or $10 or whatever. Like I just want an outlet to give these people fucking money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, totally, man, totally. I mean, I'd be fucking buying it, that's for sure. But it's yeah. So I'm so well versed from the original mastering, and so I actually didn't know there was.
The remaster.
I have listened to the remastered one. I listened to the remastered one prior to reviewing this one, but for whatever reason, I think I saw those bonus tracks at the end, but because I knew that I wasn't necessarily going to be reviewing the bonus tracks.
Yeah.
I just didn't listen to them. I did not realize it has the new
It's
lineup.
weird.
It's
not as good. But
need to listen to
it's
this as soon as I
interesting.
finish the podcast.
Yeah, we need to put it on, dude. Because
We'll
you
jam
need to
that
hear
afterwards.
it. Yeah, it's on YouTube. There's one of the YouTube versions. I'm pretty sure the remaster. It's like one of the last 2 tracks or something.
And do you know what? This actually transitions quite well because the next track on the album is actually To Give. And
Which is the first song of theirs I heard. Yeah.
Now, the cool thing about To Give is, I would say, if I were introducing this band to someone who wasn't necessarily like a massive sort of like super death metal nerd like we are, I would recommend this track because I think it's probably the most accessible track on the album.
Yeah, it feels
Whilst-
like probably like the single.
Yeah. While still retaining all the key components. Like, it's got, I just love I love like the galloping drums and like the
Yeah.
triplets. Like, triplets and fucking metal are so cool, right? It's
And
just-
those ascending chords, because this is the one where it's like diddlin, dun, diddlin, diddlin, dun, diddlin, 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 dun, dun. Like those ascending chords, like yeah, it's like this one feels a little bit Meads of Asphodel ish, because they're another band where they sometimes incorporate like very kind of positive moments.
Yeah, I need to give them a chance. I remember seeing the name all all the time growing up and getting into the scene, but never.
I can't remember what the album is, but it's the one. It's got a baptism in the warm piss of slaughtered children. That album, because I think sometimes people see Meads of Asphodel and they've got all of the like crusade kind of imagery.
Yeah.
And they think that they're probably like some kind of jarhead or whatever, but like the whole thing with them is that like the crusades are bad. Going into other countries and just fucking shit up for no reason is bad. Like it's very like kind of tongue in cheek. It's like everything is about like war is bad, religion is bad. Like it's
so
like,
not kind of like semi glorifying in the way that
Sabaton
kind of do it. I wouldn't say Sabaton are fully glorifying it, but they're treading a bit of a line, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean I've never really listened to much Sabaton. I mean I'm sure they're great and stuff like, and it's like again it's like Sabaton are cool because they get like history students into metal, like I guess like people that really into like war history and stuff, which is like a type of nerd. I guess that starts them off the line, but really they should be. It's like the thing is, right? You can listen to Sabaton or you could listen to Hail of Bullets. That's why I've never listened to Sabaton, because I'd rather listen to Hail of Bullets.
Yeah, Hail of Bullets, or even 1914.
1914, obviously Bolt Thrower. You know what I mean? Like, but I feel like Hail of Bullets is the more like grounded in real war. Because like Bolt Thrower aren't like 1962. You know what I mean? They're not doing that shit. It's like
in
more,
the trenches.
They are, but it's not like
I feel like Bolt Thrower's more casual about it.
It's more Bolt Thrower is more like spirit. It's like not spiritual. That's not the word I'm looking for. They're like conceptual, right? Bolt Thrower is more like conceptual, and obviously that's like a really cool thing about how they transitioned from being like the more kind of like fantasy based with whatever they're writing into like kind of more actual war or whatever, and that's like a really clever thing. They do have moments, because they've got like that song at the end of one of the albums where Carl's literally just reading off a list of every conflict ever. I can't remember what album it's on, but it's one of the later ones.
And I feel like he's kind of like went a bit further with that with Memoriam as well. Seems like he's taken the more socially conscious lyrical themes and explored that tenet of his
like
lyricism.
Austerity
more.
kills and stuff like that. And that's again, that's like something I think that's like really cool, how they really honed in on that and stuff. And like again, like that's really cool about Hail of Bullets, because obviously what's his fucking name? Van Duren, is it? Yeah, Martin Van Duren. Yeah, he was in the guy from Asphyx, right? Yeah, because he was in Bolt Thrower for that one album. Yeah, and then I never remember which one it is, but I think it might have been like the one with the Constantinople painting on the front. I can never remember, or Renegade or whatever it was. But yeah, like obviously with them, it's like really cool, because like their songs will be like, they have like a song about Crystal Knack, and it'll be a song about this, and it's like actual things that happened in history. It's so cool how like similar they are, but they're very different at the same time. Yeah, no, it's you know what? Talking about an underrated band like Hail Bullets, man, fucking rock. Have you ever listened to God Dethroned? No. So they're an interesting band, because they started off a bit more with like your standard like satanic anti-Christian kind of shtick, but then they went through a phase where they've done 3 albums that were like purely like sort of anti-war or war based, and like Dutch band as well, like totally fucking like legit, and like in their later albums are more to do with kind of like organized religions, but particularly honing in on not necessarily attacking the religions themselves, but the predators within certain religions that use that as a vassal for their kind of depravity. What was that death metal band? And they never got big because they had like a major label debut, and their album was called like Pedophile Priest. I can't remember what fucking band it was. No, you're thinking of Flesh Grind. The first album's called Holy Pedophile. No, they had a song called Holy Pedophile. I was listening to the interview, and the singer, he was like, on reflection, probably wasn't the best name for our first album. But fucking hell, I gotta say, Rich Lipscomb, the singer, he passed away actually, I think in 2020. I think. Really? Yeah, it was, rest in peace. The guitarist from Flesh Grind was a guest on the Heavy Hole podcast. That's it, was the guitarist. And, and to be honest, man, I fucking love like those Flesh Grind albums. They're good. Murder Without End, Seeds of Abysmal Torment. I really, really dug them. I just picked them up randomly in HMV one day, the one on Oxford Street. I just saw the CD and I was just like, oh, that looks like death metal. I'll buy it. Listen to it. And I was like, oh, it's got super guttural vocals. Yeah. And, it's like, yeah, I'm sold. Yeah. But yeah, man, fuck. Right, should we get back to the album? Yeah, sorry, that's a little tangent. Yeah. So, To Give, yeah, great track. Next track, okay. On the Way Home. There seems to be a bit of a theme in regards to returning to like a homeland, or like whether this journey is spiritual or a physical one. It's very kind of,
seems to be about self-reflection and
Yeah.
attaining some form of personal nirvana, whether it be, like in that traditional
Yeah.
sense or...
Could you find any reference to what Elvenefris is, if it's a real thing? Because I
No.
couldn't.
I couldn't find
I
fuck-
tried finding it, and every reference I found came back to this album. I couldn't find it as a real thing.
There's fuck all. I couldn't find any interviews with the band. There's that one 20-minute clip of them playing live.
Yep.
And then you've just got like countless YouTube uploads of this album with
Yep.
people talking about how much they love
Trying
them,
to
and
get
that's
views.
fucking it.
Yep, that is it. And I wondered, like, if it's kind of like like a conceptual thing, like an ideal. I wondered if it was like, because the last track of this album, which we'll get to, is called Walking in the Garden of Ma'at. And Ma'at is the Egyptian goddess of truth, justice, balance, and most importantly, order.
Yeah.
So that's a reference to like a real thing in Egypt. But
Yeah.
Elvenefris isn't, as far as I can find. It could be. It could just be like such a small thing that you need to find it in books and stuff. And
Yeah,
it's not easily
possibly,
Googleable.
yeah,
It's certainly possible.
Yeah.
But yeah, because obviously, like Bringer of Elvenefris Flame. There's multiple references to Elvenefris in the lyrics of like
In
other
the
songs. I
first-
think the
even
first song,
right?
yeah, the
Yeah,
first
Lamp
song's got there.
Sympathy,
Yeah,
yeah.
so that's clearly like a recurring theme.
Yeah.
So I wonder if that's like a journey. Like, is that like he's trying to attain a thing? Is he trying to be like? Maybe is Elvenefris a person? He's trying to like become like Elvenefris during this journey.
I've kind of the way I kind of look at it is, and I've kind of only really been thinking about this subconsciously, not too much. I've not too much focused and honed in on this idea, but obviously with the track name Bringer of Elvenefris Flame, the only thing I could kind of link it to in a way, which is kind of corny, is there's this concept in the Lord of the Rings mythology where you've got the sacred fire, which is what fuels life. And the whole thing is Morgoth, the first Dark Lord, is looking to take control of the sacred fire to become as powerful as Eru Ilúvatar, like the Tolkien's version of God. So I kind of, in my mind, attribute that as a similar thing, perhaps. Maybe it's like this inner fire or this inner thing that you could kind of attach to your soul as a person.
Yeah.
Something that's not physically attainable, but is only attainable through, whether it means a meditation or just sort of like soul searching.
Yeah, because the lyrics, I didn't think to look at the lyrics of Bringer of Elvenefris Flame, but it says, again he'll find himself in silence and solitude, again he'll rise from the land of sadness, again he'll begin to shine for your eyes. Tears shall bear his inner beauty and noble soul, and his body will come into flower by gorgeous aura. His eyes shall fill you by energy, his eyes shall permeate behind your walls, and your strongholds shall crash. You will stand before him in your nakedness, and maybe then for the first time you will see it yourself. But do not be afraid, his eyes shall purify you, and the iced hearts of yours shall suck the rays of his sun, and you'll hear the beautiful voice and the purest words, the unspoken ones. You will comprehend real love, and awakened you will weep. So I guess it's like, some kind of almighty kind of figure. Yeah.
Well, I've just had a thought. So, Lykathea Aflame kind of formed with the inclusion of Thomas Korn, right? Thomas Korn's in Cult of Fire, and I feel like there's a lot of kind of spiritual connection between the two bands in terms of
But
the
the Cult
themes.
of Fire is all about Indian stuff, and this is all
Yeah.
about Egyptian. And there's no real link there. They're not even close, are they?
No, but I think, just that similar, maybe just a similar theme of
Vibe
spirituality,
carried
just
on, yeah.
in general. Perhaps maybe he was a lyricist for Elvenefris.
Possibly.
I don't know.
Yeah,
Maybe it was
that's
like a
true.
Neil
Yeah,
Peart sort
yeah,
of
you're
thing.
right, because it did form with him. Yeah, we don't really know, do we? Line up.
There's not. No, I've just Googled. I've just went onto their Metal Archives page there, and I can't find anything.
Yeah, it says vocals, but we don't know he necessarily wrote. We'll have to have a look in the old.
So I'm
the old
thinking,
liner
because
notes.
obviously when he joined, they kind of, got rid of the Apollon Spawn moniker and then morphed into Lykathea Aflame. So
Yeah, that's
perhaps it was
true.
his inclusion that maybe his lyrical, the things he was interested in exploring lyrically that might have geared them towards these themes in the album. Because it
Yeah,
definitely,
potentially.
you're totally right. Like what he's doing in Cult of Fire is very different. But I feel like there's like a slight thread of similarity just in terms of that inner
Yeah.
soul searching.
Yeah, that in a sense. Yeah, that's I kind of think that's the thing here is like there's this extra step of removal, which is why it works, because he's not like the pyramids of Egypt. You know what I mean? There's no like I stood in front of the Sphinx. You know?
There's no cover of Walk Like an Egyptian.
Yeah, right.
on like the Japanese
and that's
bonus
what's-
edition.
Yeah, that's what stops this feeling kind of racist to me.
Yeah.
It feels a lot more inspired and kind of like there's a love and a desire and a there's just so much love in the lyrics of this album. I love it so much, and it's so kind of unique from that kind of point of
I
view.
think that's why you've got to take some of these sins, and it's difficult for us as two white males born and bred in London to comment on how people should interpret this, right?
Yeah, right.
But like at the same time, I feel like you do need to take like a case by case approach to these sort of things. And this album was released in 2000, probably recorded before then. And
of course, man.
like there's so many
social consciousness in the year 2000 is like way different to what it is now. Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
So like it's and this is why I'm so desperate for
more.
For
just
like
want to know more.
Just like more. I mean, more music would be great, but like just some fucking something from a band member just to explain some of the shit. Because I'd love to be a fly on the wall just to find out what the fuck was going on when they were putting this masterpiece together.
Yeah, we need to print out a picture of Peter. That most recent picture of him holding the vinyl of the thing, because that's more what he looks like now, just in case he's at Hellfest. And if we see him walking around, we can put a sack over his head and then take him to an interview tent and be like, right, we're going to get some answers.
Yeah. Do you think he had? You saw the live clip, right? Do you think he had a touch of the David Vincent's about him?
Yeah, he looks sick. He looks so good.
Yeah,
he looks really great. I'm so sad there's not more live clips. They're really cool looking.
Yeah, right. Which track are we on? We're on The Way Home. I would say this is probably the most epic song on the album, which I think is quite a prestigious title considering how fucking
very epic album.
Epic the album is. Once again, it's got that distinctive Eastern flavor, especially on the opening riff. There's a riff in here which is backed up by the keys that really conjure up that feeling of Egypt to me. I've never fucking been to Egypt, but this riff reminds me of Egypt. It's the one that goes da 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 na na, a bit like that. But I'm
not hearing it yet, but I'll probably know. I'll probably get it.
I'll play it for you afterwards.
I'll get it in a minute. Yeah.
But it's.
I think I know what you mean now. Yeah.
I just love the way like this band they have to. It's almost like there's some member of the band that is reminding everybody composing the album that there needs to be a super brutal section. It was like, we need to hit them hard at some point. Right. And I don't care how beautiful this album is, there needs to be a fucking blasting segment.
Yeah.
And it's always so fucking sick.
So sick.
And this the transitions on this track alone, there's so much riffs and transitions going on. And like, for the drum, for Thomas Korn, I think was how you would pronounce it, to be to keep up with this and keep the drum fills energetic and consistent is just so fucking astounding.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And again, like it kind of somehow with those melodic elements feels like you're on the way home. Yeah. It has that feeling. It does. It somehow conjures that in you. Like when you look at it for the first time and see it's called you're like, yeah, that makes sense. That makes total sense.
100%. Like the track On the Way Home and the last track, one of the later tracks, which is probably my favorite track on the album, A Step Closer. Yeah. It feels like you're making the journey a step closer. Like like the music is reflected. The lyrics, are reflected in the music so fucking perfectly.
And there's a lot of the lyrics talk a lot about like lessons. There's a lot of like learning and accepting that you're not all powerful, accepting that your point of view isn't the only one, accepting that there are other beings more powerful than yourself, which it's really interesting and it fits in a lot with that, like like a cynic kind of deaf human, that whole kind of side of things. This is
a bit more like kind of metaphysical and just kind of
and like I guess the flip side of what we were saying earlier is that you could almost look at this as like this is kind of if Latter Day Death had ended up being a slam band, it's kind of what this would sound like, that kind of like that more proggier kind of style.
If Chuck was hanging out with Carl Sanders,
right?
And then they got into slam and
or just fucking what's his name from oh fuck's sake,
Paul Riedel.
Yeah, Paul Riedel.
Even though he probably would have been about. Well, he would have been about fucking what 10 months album. No. Actually, he's my age.
Yeah, he's our age. Yeah. No, I was gonna say what's his name? Mullen.
Frank Mullen. Yeah. God. Yeah. I love Frank Mullen. You ever seen that clip of him playing like the final Suffocation show and he's like fucking crying?
No.
It's so good. It's so emotional, man. Because like he's like once again a perfect example of someone that his like don't get me wrong, Suffocation, legendary band, right? But this guy's making so much fucking money doing like actual like fucking. I think he either has his own construction company.
Oh, really?
Or something like that, which he is making an absolute killing on, like more money than he is on Suffocation. Okay. And he's just admittedly just hit the nail on the head and been like, look, listen, I've got a family now, I've got shit. Like the logistics of touring are so rigorous, right? That he's decided to be a family man now. But it was just so touching to see, because it's kind of like bowing out on a high.
Yeah.
Because the man's super successful in his personal life.
Yeah.
And he's achieved kind of like cult status in the death metal scene.
Yeah,
Like, like Suffocation have never compromised. And
Yeah.
his influence is also like indelible on the scene. Like, you hear Suffocation everywhere. Like, they are the first, one of the progenitors of that slam style.
Yeah. That's really interesting, because that's like the inverse of what's the original Eternal Bleeding? Well, not the original one, but the
Frank Reaney?
Reaney, yeah. Like hearing Reaney talk about when he got like called up to do like a bunch of like big like festival gigs and stuff with Internal Bleeding, to come back, like he got offered a whole bunch of money and stuff, and he made it like work with his like day job and stuff, and like he was saying how he had to like exercise loads to get back in shape to be able to play live and stuff, and it was like when he was playing Internal Bleeding like back in the day, like he never achieved those heights.
Yeah.
And he just had this normal life for years, and he kind of was like, can't do it anymore originally, and had to bow out, and other people took his place and stuff. But then when he like came back for those shows, like he got to kind of witness that a bit, like, where like people, like all these younger people were kind of like, fuck, Internal Bleeding is so sick,
It's like it's like kind of like a Rocky Balboa moment.
Yeah,
almost,
yeah, totally, yeah. Which is so Long Island.
Yeah, no, it really is. It really is. All right, move on to the next track. So we've got a few left to go. Shine of Consolation. I love the riffs on this album. This has got some of the... It's funny, like, one of the segments kind of sounds like... And this would be the last time you ever hear me comparing Lykathea Aflame to Metallica. But it's kind of got, like, the one style machine gun. Like, riffing and which... Like, don't get me wrong, I do like the track one, but they've kind of done, like, this weird kind of, like, fucking harmonic variation of it here. And it just sounds so fucking cool. I love how locked in the rhythm section are with this band. Yeah. Like, the bass work on here is fantastic.
Yeah, very understated, underappreciated.
And it does get given the chance to shine. I felt like the bass is more audible in the remastered version. Yeah. Which I think is one positive from the remastered version. Like, I personally am a fan of, like, the insane snare and drums, but it's this track is great. I think it's the shortest track on the album as well, and once again they somehow managed to cram every element of what they're bringing to the table into a 3.5 minute track, which is just fucking nuts. Like, it
really is
everything down to the clean vocal passages. This track has got a really cool kind of like almost Viking-esque emphatic vocal passage, which kind of reminds me of like that period of Enslaved where Grutler was doing like the bulk of the clean vocals before Herbrand was in the band.
Ah, okay, yeah.
But it was a bit more kind of like Norse-esque.
Yeah.
And it has that similar kind of like like
longboat kind of. Yeah. We're putting the longboats into the waters as we leave. Yeah.
But yeah, great track. And yeah, the next track, we went from the shortest track on the album to I think the longest one, Sadness and Strength.
It's close. I think An Old Man and a Child is 9 minutes 10. Sadness and Strength is 8:05.
Okay, I'm a bit off on my timing there. God, there is one riff here about I think it's about a minute in, that sounds like the guitar is being fed through like a car alarm or something. Because it's just like really jarring, but like super fucking cool. And it's like a proper dizzying, like technical riff.
What's the song that starts like... Because they use octavers a lot on this album, and it's really cool. They use like clean guitar pedals, but with like an extra layer of the sound fed through like, I guess, like a POG or something, where it's like an octave up, to replicate those kind of like like more like traditional folk kind of string instruments that are kind of like oud and things like this, where it's like much higher up, and that's kind of like a kind of quite cool concession they make to and a lot of those like ascending spidery kind of passages they play. Yeah, that's like you're talking about they switch between like effects a lot. Like a lot of the time when they're going into those kind of riffs, they kick on that like octave up effect, like both clean and on the distorted kind of thing, and it can really make a big difference. Yeah,
but like from a technical perspective, how fucking hard is that to do?
It is hard, and it isn't, because if you were just setting all the pedals up in like an order and you had to turn off each of them to do that, then it would be very hard. But you can get like pedal switches, where they've like, it's like a separate box where it's like 6 individual like things you can stamp on, and then you can feed the pedals in certain combinations. So it's like, if I hit this first one, it's like my dirty tone and this, and if I hit this second one, so if you were to do it in a certain setup, like, yes, it would be impossible,
Yeah.
to do it in any kind of meaningful way. But there are ways you can do it, and there's like you've got like effects loops and stuff where you have like a dedicated clean sound, and then you've got a dedicated like dirty sound. Like that's what I use in Lowen, as I've got like a pedal that when I press it, like this is my bass heavy thing, and then I've got one where I can kind of like set up all my other like funky effects while the heavy one's on. Then when I turn the heavy one off, I've already got my pre-made like cocktail of modulated kind of effects. So there's different ways you can do it, and there's certainly things you can do to make it a lot more kind of sensible.
Yeah. It's so, because like it's interesting, isn't it? Because like I always love hearing about the technical side of things, because it's just something I'm just not well versed in at all. Because like this, you were saying this.
You know what sucks though is no one really talks about it, and it fucking took me ages to find out about stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I really fucking wish someone had just been like, yeah, you can just buy a fucking thing that makes it way easier to do all this shit. Yeah. Because
you're saying you get quite a few people coming up to you just asking how they
got
gigs
sound
and stuff.
And, like, how do you do this? What's going on? Yeah. And I really wish that it was like there was more of a culture. I definitely grew up in a culture where people were like, oh no, if I've got a good sound, I'm going to hide it.
Yeah.
You know, but like everyone, if you're playing Def, you're playing some kind of dual rectifier 5150 kind of thing, and that's just the best amp, you know. Yeah. But it's interesting because you go to like the Doom side of things. There's it's really interesting because there's a lot less focus on technical ability and playing well, and there's a lot more focus on like, oh, well, what amp have you got? A Sun amp? Have you got a, is it, have you got one of these? Or have you got the most expensive orange amp? Or have you got the cheapest one? Oh, what fuzz pedal do you have? Do you have like a boutique fuzz pedal?
Yeah.
Whereas like in death metal, you don't get that. Everyone's just like, yeah, dual Rex.
Yeah.
Great. And that's like 99% of it. You know, a lot of like, you don't even have a lot of like clean sounds or reverb or anything like that. Or if you do, it's like a delay pedal. You have like Bolt Thrower had a set like dirty sound, and then they had another sound, like both the guitarists had another sound for when they were doing solos. It was just like tons of delay and a bit more distortion, and that was their two sounds. That was all they used. Like there's probably things on albums where they added extra effects and stuff, but when they applied, that's all they needed.
So it just shows, I think, more stripped back can be more effective at times, right?
Perhaps, there's just other elements and stuff. I think that's like when you incorporate certain things, like I was talking about that octave effect, that's like effects like that can give your band like repeated use of them in your songwriting, and kind of like writing around an effect like that can give your band an identity. And that's one of the things this band have done so fucking well that people probably weren't doing as much or in the same way. Is like, it's really important to stand out from a crowd. Like if you're starting a band now, you should probably try and make it so that people can find your name on Google. You know, like Lykathea Aflame, pretty good name for that. Not that it's I don't think it's necessarily a good name. When I first heard it, I didn't like it. Like I love it now because I love the band, but I think when you hear that name for the first time, it doesn't really gel with you. But in terms of like their sound, like when you hear that first fucking bit of Elvenefris, and it's like and it's got the octave thing, and it's clean, and it goes like they don't sound like in that first 10 seconds of fucking music, they don't sound like any other band. No, and they sound like Lykathea Aflame. Genius. So
like what you were saying is, so they kind of layer the ascending and descending. Then so it's kind of like scaling up and down at the same time. Or?
They do that as well, but that's not really what I'm saying. No, that kind of it kind of goes up and back down again. It's like they're playing up and down a scale. But it doesn't always like end. Like I think like a traditional kind of Western thing is to like kind of, I mean, it depends. Like obviously music's fucking very broad, you know. But like I think part of the cool thing, and that's quite present in kind of like Eastern. I'm not sure if North Africa really counts as Eastern, but like kind of like going to a certain place on a scale and then like going to a different place. Where you kind of go up and go down, then kind of go up into a whole different register. It's like that's quite an Eastern thing. And that's kind of something that they've paid a lot of attention to before they even wrote this album, because those riffs are very kind of like authentically, they're not like chopsticks Eastern music. You know, you could play like there's certain melodies and stuff where you'd be like, hum me like an Egyptian melody, you'd think of like walk like an Egyptian, or something like that. You know what I mean? There's certain things that you can kind of think of as like a hackneyed version of like, I don't know much about music, but this is what I would think that is. And then these guys have gone, I'm going to use rhythms and stuff that people play on traditional folk instruments from that region. You know.
So based on all that, I would presume these guys are classically trained. Would you think?
I mean, I certainly could make sense if they were, because they're so fucking talented.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I would not be surprised if the guitarist is classically trained, because he's so fucking good.
Such good shit, man. I'm just in such awe. Fuck, where are we at? So, next track, fucking A Step Closer. This is probably my favorite track on the album, I think. And there's very few musical pieces that can combine the combination of like something so intrinsically emotional and so searing with something so just brutal with the blast and then just the pummeling rhythms. 4 minutes 40 onwards is probably one of my favorite sections of the whole album. It's got a really, and you kind of hit the nail on the head earlier, it's got a real sense of longing and aching to the melody, and it's just, and they drag it out, it goes on, and it's like they do it with Tomas blasting, and then they transition out of it and then go back with a halftime beat, which just is just so, I fucking love when that happens. It just sounds so fucking really righteous. Good. And just like so a little bit of a story. So when I was doing my A-levels, I went to a couple of additional revision classes in Queen Mary's University. So I went to school in Pimlico, so I had to get like what I actually had to do was I was babysitting for the head teacher.
Oh, really?
So I used to get paid to babysit for the head teacher. And I used to have to drop him off to his dad in Hammersmith. And then I would have to get the train from Hammersmith all the way to Queen Mary's, which was a long journey, but it was the exact length of time of Elvenefris.
No way.
And so, and like I would always know, so like I could fall asleep and like totally like veg out to the album and know that as soon as like A Step Closer was kicking in towards that bit, which was like my favorite part of the album, I was like, okay, I've got about 5 minutes left.
That is a testament to how much you've listened to, how much of a fan you are of this album, that you listen to it that much.
But that's the thing, man. It's like, and that's what I used to love about traveling on public transport. I mean, there's not many things to love about the TFL in London, but like it's like I totally used it as time to consume music. And
I was thinking about this today. I was on the tube and I was thinking like, oh god, it would be terrible when they get to things to the point where there's like just Wi-Fi on all the carriages all the time, because I really like that kind of like separation from just listening to the music on your phone or whatever. And
well, this goes back to my point. This is why I hate being fucking bothered on public transport. So I feel like it's one of the few times in my life where I have some time just for me.
Yeah.
And it's mainly spent just listening to music and staring out the window, pretending I'm in a music video.
Yeah.
To ill disposed.
Ill disposed.
But yeah, just fucking fantastic track. And then the last kind of like sort of full band track of the album, you got An Old Man and a Child. Starts with, like I was saying before, that this cool, almost slamming riff and like super guttural percussive vocals. I love the keys and effects on this track. It's just got a great combination of kind of groove, melody, like the syncopation is just off the scale. And it's got such a cool, triumphant and climatic end. This is the longest track on the album, right?
Yeah.
Just so fucking good. And then, and then the outro as well, like such a fucking peaceful and like Zen-like outro, like walking in the gardens of Matt, is it?
Matt,
Matt. Fucking just an amazing album. I can't say it enough.
There's something so fucking special. I think it probably gets pushed aside a lot, the last track, and people are like, oh, it's just like a trancey kind of new agey kind of thing. But like, there's something so fucking purifying about it, and really just like, it's called Walking in the Garden of Ma'at, and as I said earlier, Ma'at is like a goddess. And something that's really interesting I found out recently is that the English word paradise comes from a Farsi word for garden.
Oh, okay.
So the concept of like paradise and like eternal happiness or something is essentially in the English language is rooted in like a beautiful garden.
Okay.
Which I think is super interesting in the context of this song. And it's like, it's kind of like this like, imagine, it's like an afterlife kind of thing.
Yeah.
And there's this, and it's like, and again, there's something about this album is like I said, so much of it is focused on, the lyrics is focused on like lessons and a journey. And I feel a bit like the brutality and all the slammy kind of parts of this album is like kind of, it feels to me like it's like the harsh reality of just being alive. And just all of the things that you are confronted by, all of the challenges that you meet in your life, and just like the roiling chaos of what it means to be a human, and the fact that like as much as it's what I want to do, I can't just sit and like fucking eat fucking berries and read books in the garden all day, which is
Yeah.
what I really would love to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like, yeah, it's really interesting that this idea of complete peace, you know, and it's like, that's kind of why it's really cool to me that this particular song is there at the end of the album. And it's like, I love the fucking slammy music and it's great. And it's like, because you've been through that and because it's removed, that's kind of what is special about it as well. Its absence kind of reinforces what it is and why it's special. And I don't think this is a throwaway song. I think this is like a really beautiful bookend to the kind of the whole chaos of the whole thing. And it's like, again, it's like this attained enlightenment. It's just the end of the journey.
I 100% agree. It's like, for me, it's always served as a really good palate cleanser.
Yeah.
And it's such a good fucking track, honestly, in its own right. Don't get me wrong. Like, it doesn't have the elements of the other tracks. You know, it's not a band track, but I think it's testament to how skilled the keyboardist and the person responsible for a lot of the synths are, like Yuri, I believe. Because it just shows that when done tastefully, like, those additional elements can elevate an album to somewhere far above what it would have been without those elements.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm totally with you there, 100%. And that's actually something I never thought about. But yeah, like, a lot of it, because it is such a pummeling, heavy album in a lot of ways. And like, it does kind of feel like that battle between, you know, kind of like the grind and industrialization of the modern world versus, you know, like what the world was originally, which was like, you know, like a beautiful paradise filled with, you know, like natural wonders.
And that feeds into this, the dreamy thing.
Yeah.
And like, you know, like they come from Czechoslovakia. They don't come from Egypt.
Yeah.
And Egypt doesn't even look like the Garden of Ma'at. You go to the fucking Great Pyramid and it's all buildings around a fucking
fucking
little
McDonald's,
patch of sand.
right?
Yeah,
Within-
the McDonald's. Yeah, it's like Egypt is like, you know, in its own way industrialized a lot, you know, and it's like, it's not where it used to be in a lot of ways. And, you know, cultural things have kind of moved on.
I think it's interesting because I feel like there's a lot of people that expect when they visit another country or a place, they expect the experience to present itself to them. They don't understand that that the person has got to be the one to initiate the experience.
Yeah.
Right? Because, like, you know, and I think it's all down to your mindset and just how open-minded you are in visiting these sort of places. And the best example I could kind of give, which is like, you know, if you take your standard sort of British tourist who goes to somewhere, let's take Spain, for example. You've got that tenant of people that would go to somewhere like Spain and just stay at the beach connected to the hotel for the whole thing, just lounge about. And that's great. If that's the sort of holiday you want, absolutely fine. But, like, I think there's certain people that when they visit other countries are so close-minded to the culture and what is important in that country.
Yeah.
They want the tourist experience as opposed to what it is actually like to be in that country or to be part of a different type of culture or even to be part of, but to experience what it's like to be involved in a different culture. And it's like...
Well, that's what happens when governments convince people that immigrants are scary and that things that aren't normal, you know, they kind of, that's what happens when populaces are kept ignorant and, you know, money isn't invested in education and stuff like that. Because what is it, like the perfect cure for racism is travel?
Yeah.
There's that say something like that, and it's like if you just anyone who actually goes and spends time with any different person from a different culture or a different area of the world is like, it's just plain to see that human beings are human beings no matter where you go, and like at the root they're beautiful things, and sometimes we're driven by an innate impulse to hoard resources that like goes back to like a primordial kind of thing of like how we managed to kind of beat all the other animals and rise up to our position in the animal kingdom as it is, you know, and it's our fatal flaw. It's the human weakness, you know. That's like that's the eternal kind of question of why we're alive and everything like that, because we're kind of we're compelled to destroy as well as create at the same time, and we can't just enjoy what we create.
I think that it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because it's kind of like, I suppose, the whole nature versus nurture argument in a way, because like, you know, we're self-conscious and self-aware enough to know better and to be able to overcome certain instincts.
Yeah.
And however primal they may be.
Yeah. Well, you've got like sorry.
But yeah, no, and it's like, you know, I think a lot of the time, I think humans, certain people, have such a strong ego that they think that we're not really top of the food chain. You know what I mean? Like, we're not. It's like, if you look at like animals in their purest form, like their existence, however simple we may view it to be, is just like animals are truly free.
Yeah.
Well, the ones that we haven't fucking
What was
captured.
that?
And fucking.
What was that meme of like a human and a gorilla, and the human's like, "Oh, I'm so much better than you," and the gorilla's like, "But you pay bills and you work and you still don't have any money," you know, like.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's good. It's just like, oh yeah, I've seen so many good ones of them actually. Yeah, they're pretty good. But it's like that whole return to monk meme. Have you seen that? It's fucking stupid. The internet is a weird and wonderful place.
Yeah, I think we've done the album.
I think we've done it, mate. Fantastic album. I'll just say one last time: anybody that has never listened to this album, if you're remotely interested in extreme metal, death metal, there's even a slight element of black metal in some of the tracks here. Do yourself a favor and listen to it. You might not like it, but I could almost guarantee.
If you don't like it, you are wrong.
Yeah.
Ding dong, you're wrong.
So, and by all means, feel free to leave us a like and subscribe. Leave us a like and support. I've been talking so much shit. So subscribe, leave us a like, and let us know what you think of this album if you have listened to it. Because I'm always up for discussing this album with people, particularly people that don't like it, because it boggles my mind. So, well, guys, thank you very much for listening, and until next time.
Till next time.
Sick.